Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In the quiet countryside, nestled between the worn paths of isolation and forgotten memories, stood a weathered farmhouse that had long stopped welcoming visitors. Its owner, a man hardened by years of loneliness, had shut his heart to the world. Life moved on in silence, interrupted only by the occasional rustling wind and the sounds of cattle. Then one day, a soft knock on his wooden door echoed through the stillness. A young woman, eyes full of worry, stood outside with an empty jug, asking only for a bit of milk. That small request would change everything. From the outside, the house reflected the man's state of being strong yet worn down by time. The wooden planks on the porch were faded and splintered, the paint on the walls chipped by rain and sun, and the roof held memories of many winters past. But there was an undeniable charm to it, a sense that life once flourished here. The land around was vast and fertile, marked by a rustic fence and green pastures where cows grazed peacefully. There were signs of forgotten labor, a broken wheelbarrow, an old saddle on the fence, but it all added character to the homestead. Inside, the home bore the touch of someone who had learned to live alone. It was functional, clean, and modest. There was a strong masculine presence, thick wooden furniture, shelves stacked with old books, and a fireplace where ashes still lingered from last winter. But something had changed since her visit. A vase with fresh wildflowers now sat on the windowsill, and the kitchen had been cleaned more often, as though expecting someone. Though the interior remained simple, it now echoed with subtle hints of warmth and companionship that had not been there before. Performance in this story refers not to machinery but to resilience, both emotional and physical. The man had long been operating like an old engine, reliable but uninspired. The arrival of the young woman was like fuel to a dying flame. Her energy brought new life to the farm. Tasks that had been left undone for months were now tackled with purpose. He began tending to the cows more carefully, fixing the creaky gate, and even mending the small barn roof. She had unknowingly revived his sense of purpose. Her simple request for milk had given him a reason to care again, and in turn, he began performing with a newfound sense of pride. When it comes to safety features, emotional security becomes the focus. Over time, she returned not just for milk, but for conversation, for help, and eventually for comfort. He was guarded at first, still hesitant to open up. But with each visit, she chipped away at the walls he had built. Her consistent kindness made the space feel safer, not just for her but for him. He began to trust again. The home, once silent, now held laughter. The sense of protection grew beyond physical fences and locked doors. She felt safe in his presence, and he, for the first time in years, felt that someone valued his presence. What made their story unique was not just the unexpected connection, but how something so simple, milk, became the bridge between two lonely souls. She didn't come asking for help in grand ways, she just asked for something small, something ordinary. But it was that small act that set in motion a chain of healing. He didn't know her story at first, only that she lived in the nearby village with her siblings and an ill mother. Her strength was hidden behind humility. And he, who had once been strong but closed off, found his strength returning through vulnerability. They were opposites, yet somehow completed each other. There was no price on what they found. You couldn't measure the cost of healing or the value of emotional rebirth. If you looked at it practically, there was the cost of a few liters of milk, maybe a shared loaf of bread, or a few hours spent fixing her bicycle. But the real transaction was one of trust and care. He gave her shelter when she needed it, offered support during hard times, and she gave him a reason to live again. Neither kept score. It was not a love bought or sold, but earned through quiet moments and mutual understanding. In the end, the transformation was undeniable. What started as a simple knock on the door led to the revival of a man's soul and the beginning of a partnership rooted in kindness. The house once filled with echoes now rang with life. The cows were tended to with joy, meals were shared on the porch, and silence was replaced by conversation and laughter. He had closed his heart for years, fearing the pain of the past. But she, with nothing more than a request for milk and a heart full of quiet hope, gave him a future to believe in again. Their story was not one of fairy tale romance, but of human connection, healing, and the slow rebuilding of trust. And that, in the end, is what made it so powerful.